So we've announced over the last couple weeks some of the different pilgrimages that'll be coming up in the next couple years, and particularly the Eucharistic Miracles of Italy that'll be next May, a year from this May. And one of the things that hadn't been included in the itinerary, I had to get a rewrite from, was something I'm excited to do in Assisi, which is to go to the Church of the Dispossession of St. Francis, where Blessed Carlo Acutis is buried. He was the Italian youth that died at the age 15 and had a very devoted, particularly made a commitment, if you remember, to creating a website to promote Eucharistic miracles because he was so fascinated by them. And one thing he asked, one request he had, that if he could ever be buried somewhere, to be buried in the Church of the Dispossession of St. Francis. The place where St. Francis, when he heard the gospel, to give everything away, dispossessed his family's inheritance, gave his life completely to God, and we know started that great movement, which was really a recreation, a moment of renewal for the church in the 13th century between Saints Francis and Dominic and their religious orders they started. Their radical kind of living of the gospel really gave renewal to the church back in that time. And so it was that same gospel, Matthew, I think 19, that when Jesus said, if you want to be perfect, go sell all you have, give your possession, give the money to the poor, and come follow me. That a man heard in the 200s, it was around 270 AD, his name was Anthony, and he had his parents had died when he was young, about 20 years old. He had a younger sister, and he had inherited a good amount of land, 300 acres, they say. And he heard that gospel, and he felt compelled to do the same thing as St. Francis, although he was doing it 1,000 years earlier, right? And to radically give his life to God and give everything away. And in so doing, he felt inclined to kind of go to the outskirts of the city. This was in Egypt, in Alexandria, and just live an ascetic life. Fasting, prayer, labor, hard work. And even then, his wisdom became so well known, and people were so taken by this witness he was giving that he was getting all these visitors coming to see him, to ask for prayers. Of course, miracles were happening through his prayer. So he eventually literally went out into about 60 miles from Alexandria into the desert and lived for at least 15 years. He lived to be 100 years old. We know him now as St. Anthony the Abbot, St. Anthony of the Desert, St. Anthony the Great, and he really is considered the father of monasticism. People started coming to him, and again, like St. Francis, they were drawn to live like him and with him. And so these communities, now they still kind of lived in their separate hermitages, so to speak, but they'd come together for communal prayer and different things. And so this kind of became the model of the religious life. And remember, that was before actually Christianity was legalized, but that kind of set the foundation for that in the 300s when Christianity was legalized, and there wasn't as much of the red martyrdom of people being killed because they were Christian, that now and it became normalized to be Christian. It wasn't as radical of a thing, and people, what happens when that happens? They were getting soft, right? So we started hearing about what we now call the white martyrdom, that go out into the deserts, go out into these places away to live in community, to focus on prayer, fasting, and work. And so we see this way of bringing new life to the church and oneself. And so I can't help but think of Anthony when I see the gospel every year on the first Sunday of Lent. Jesus goes to the desert. Right? It's that same instinct. He goes there to really focus and get into the spiritual place he needs to be maybe in a way to be kind of renewed and cleansed completely so he can begin his public ministry. It's a new creation in a sense. You know, you could call it for him. Going back to the model that we see happening in the earlier readings, right? We could go back to the garden, which we don't hear in the readings, but we can't help but see the parallels between Adam in the garden. You know, there are wild beasts, there are angels, and there's Satan tempting. Same thing that Mark just very succinctly, as he does, just sets that tone. You can't help but think of the garden when you think of where Jesus is going. He's going back to the garden, right? The new Adam now is going to create a new creation. It's going to right the wrong of the fall. And Noah, you could almost consider a new Adam. I hadn't thought about this before, because he's now be given an opportunity to start a new creation. And we don't see it in the reading today, but earlier in the verses before the reading, Noah's actually given he's given the task of being fruitful and multiplying, which Adam and Eve had been given in the garden initially. He's given dominion over the earth, as Adam and Eve had been given, right? So there's this sense of a new creation, a new beginning. And then, of course, we jump up to Jesus in the garden, in the desert, and now the true new Adam, the second Adam, who's bringing humanity to a whole new creation, kind of restoring that original vision of God before the fall, now does it in the context of the desert, right? And so we see this invitation to go to the desert to be made a new creation. That's what Lent is all about. To say yes, like humanity between Adam and Adam and Noah, I've lost my communion with God. I've lost my focus. You know, I need to be recreated. And of course, between Noah and jump into Jesus, and it's not just a human thing that I need to be in control of, but a divine thing that I need to let God be in control of, to recreate me in ways beyond, what I think or what I limit or what I know. And that's the invitation to go to the desert. And in our own way, to find that desert this Lent. Whatever that desert is for each one of us looks different. It looked different for St. Anthony, obviously, and St. Francis, much more intense and radical. But the desert we're called to is as life-giving as the one they were called to. And we got to find it. So I hope we've been searching for it. I hope we've found it already. But if you haven't, find your desert this Lent. And find that place where God's going to make you new. And be content with nothing less than, it's not just about giving up a few things and, it's about becoming a new creation in Jesus Christ every Lent. And it starts with our surrender. It starts with us letting the Spirit lead us to our desert.